let me start by asking you a very direct question. How do you feel right now?
Oh, that's uh, that's a loaded question for a lot of people.
Right. And I don't mean, what are you planning to do later today or what conversation you're ruminating on from yesterday. Just right now, in your physical body, how do you actually feel?
Yeah. It's a question that makes most people just completely freeze up
Yeah,
because, well, we spend so much of our existence living purely from the neck up,
we really do.
We are completely detached from our physical sensations.
Exactly. And if you actually stop and check in with your body, the answer usually reveals a fairly uncomfortable truth.
Oh, definitely.
You might notice like a tightness in your chest or a shallow breath or just a hum of ambient anxiety.
Yeah, that constant hum.
Right. And it
Yeah,
becomes incredibly clear that we are completely at the mercy of our emotions rather than, in control of them. We just get swept away by the current.
we do. We really do.
But today, we are dismantling that current. So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are tearing into the first part of T. Maris's book, Master Your Emotions.
Which is such an essential text
Yeah.
because it addresses a fundamental human dilemma.
It really is.
I mean, we navigate the world operating the most complex biological supercomputer in the universe, our own brain, and we are handed this machinery with absolutely zero guidance.
None. Zero.
Right. We get instruction manuals for, like, microwaves, but nothing for the mind.
Yeah, exactly. So our mission today is to open that manual. We're going to explore the underlying biological and psychological mechanics of your negative emotions.
And the ultimate goal here is to help you realize that you are not your emotions. You are simply the witness to them.
Which is a huge shift in perspective. But to get to that realization, we have to establish a baseline truth about our human hardware, right?
Yeah, you have to look at your brain as an organic machine that is optimized for an environment that just, well, it no longer exists.
Right, the ancestral savanna.
Exactly. Its primary overriding directive is your physical survival. Happiness is, it's not even on the priority list.
That is such a tough concept to swallow because our entire modern culture is basically built on the pursuit of happiness.
It is.
We inherently assume that if we aren't walking around feeling joyful, then something inside us is broken.
Right, but nothing is broken. In fact, feeling anxious or negative is proof that your hardware is functioning exactly as it was designed to.
Okay, unpack that a little bit.
So to keep you alive back then, evolution hardwired your brain with a profound negativity bias. Think about the mathematics of survival, right?
Okay.
An early human who prioritized enjoying a beautiful sunset over, say, scanning the bushes for a predator.
They didn't survive.
Exactly. They didn't survive to pass on their genes.
Yeah.
A false positive, like running away from wind in the bushes, costs nothing.
You just look a little silly.
Right. But a false negative, assuming a tiger, is just the wind that costs you your life.
Wow. So we are the direct descendants of the most anxious, hypervigilant humans who ever lived.
We are. We inherited this hypervigilant alarm system.
Okay, let's unpack this. So our brain is basically like an outdated smoke detector that goes off when you burn a piece of toast, acting like the whole house is burning down.
That is the perfect analogy.
Yeah.
Yes.
But surely, in the modern world, we know we aren't going to die just because our boss criticizes us, right? The brain has to know the difference between a literal tiger and a bad performance review.
Well, consciously you know the difference.
Yeah.
But neurologically,
Uh-huh.
your amygdala, which is the brain's threat detection center,
Mm-hmm.
it does not.
Wait, really? It doesn't know the difference?
It cannot distinguish between a physical threat to your life and a social threat to your status.
Oh, because back in the day, social status meant survival.
Exactly. For early humans, being rejected by the tribe meant being cast out into the wilderness to starve. So social death literally meant physical death.
Which explains why we catastrophize everything. Like if my boss sends me a message saying, we need to talk, my heart rate spikes, my palms get sweaty, and cortisol just floods my system.
Yeah.
And my brain immediately spins this wild narrative, right? Like, the boss is mad, I'll get fired, I won't find another job, my family will leave me, and I will starve in the street.
That is the amygdala completely hijacking your reality. And the book uses this perfect example of an author navigating reviews online.
Oh, yeah, the one-star review thing.
Right. This author could have 50 glowing 5-star reviews praising their work, but they get one single 1-star review, and suddenly they're just consumed by this terrible sinking feeling.
Because the brain dismisses the 50 positive signals.
Exactly, because positive signals don't require evasive action. So it hyperfixates on the single negative review, treating that social rejection as an existential threat.
We are reacting to a typo from an internet stranger like it's a predator trying to eat us.
Pretty much.
But it's not just our threat detection system that is misfiring in the modern world, is it? Our reward systems are also being weaponized against us.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about dopamine.
Right, so dopamine is the drive chemical. Evolution developed this neurotransmitter to reward behaviors that keep the species going. Specifically, foraging for food and finding a mate.
It creates that craving that compels us to act.
Yes, without dopamine, early humans would have just sat around in caves until they starved to death.
But in a modern environment, we don't have to hunt or forage at all. And we've engineered these environments that exploit that drive circuit with terrifying efficiency.
We really have.
I'm thinking specifically about the studies and the stories the book highlights.
Yeah, it highlights this staggering study conducted at Tulane University. Participants were given the ability to artificially self-stimulate the pleasure centers of their own brains.
So they bypassed the behavior completely and went straight for the chemical reward.
Exactly. And the participants chose to press that simulation button an average of 40 times a minute.
40 times a minute. That's
Yeah.
almost once a second. And they refused to stop even to eat, right?
Yeah, they chose the artificial dopamine spike over fundamental nourishment. They literally starved themselves just to keep the reward circuit firing.
That is terrifying.
It is. Because in a natural environment, getting dopamine requires massive effort. But today, we have infinite, effortless dopamine delivery systems in our pockets via our phones or on our screens.
Which leads to a massive downregulation of our dopamine receptors.
Right?
Downregulation meaning the brain adapts to the constant flood of chemicals by dulling the receptors. So you need more and more stimulation just to feel a baseline level of normal.
Exactly. Which maps perfectly onto the tragic, real-world case of Lee Sung-sim.
Oh, the Korean gamer from 2005?
Yes, he played a video game for 58 hours straight. He consumed very little water, no food, and had absolutely no sleep.
And his heart ultimately failed from exhaustion and dehydration. And he was only, 28 years old?
Just 28.
I mean, a young man chose to sit in a chair until his heart literally gave out. How does the biological hardware fail that spectacularly?
Because the video game provided a hyper-optimized variable ratio schedule of reinforcement.
Meaning it was unpredictable.
Right. It delivered constant, unpredictable spikes of dopamine that were so intense and so engaging that they completely overrode the brain's baseline survival signals for thirst, hunger, and sleep.
That is just, wow. And this mechanism really explains so much about the illusion of modern happiness, too. We all kind of operate on this myth of, one day I will,
The one-day myth, yeah.
Like, one day I will get that promotion, or I will buy that luxury car, or I will move into that bigger house, and then finally my brain will let me be happy.
And that is perhaps the ultimate biological trap. It's a phenomenon known as hedonic adaptation.
Hedonic adaptation.
Yeah, your mind is explicitly designed to acclimate to new circumstances. It establishes a homeostasis.
So it brings you back to a baseline.
Exactly. This ensures that you don't just achieve one goal and sit back forever, right? The brain dulls the satisfaction, so you are driven to pursue the next survival objective.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The study from 1978 that the author references to prove this concept, it is completely counterintuitive to everything we believe about happiness.
It really is. So researchers compared the psychological states of two wildly different groups, people who had just won the lottery and people who had recently become paraplegic.
Two absolute extremes.
Right. And if you look at that purely through the lens of external circumstances, you would assume the lottery winners experienced this permanent elevation into bliss, and the paraplegics suffered a permanent descent into misery.
Naturally, yeah.
But the researchers found that 1 year after the respective events, both groups had returned to their previous individual baselines of happiness.
Just let the mechanics of that sink in for a second.
Yeah.
1 year after winning the lottery, your brain has completely normalized the windfall.
Completely.
You are no happier than you were before you bought the ticket.
Because the dopamine receptors downregulated to match the new environment. Yeah. And researcher Sanjay Lubomirsky breaks this down into a really stark formula for human happiness. She says 50% of our baseline is determined by genetics.
Okay, so half is just hardwired.
Right. Then 40% is governed by our internal mindset and practices, and only 10% is dictated by external factors.
Wait, only 10% comes from external things.
Just 10%.
So our absolute obsession with upgrading our circumstances, like our wealth, our status, our possessions, It is a massive misallocation of energy if the goal is lasting peace.
It is biologically futile.
Okay, so if our biology handles our physical survival and it's heavily rigged against our happiness, there must be a psychological component making things worse, right? Because the negativity bias doesn't explain all of our suffering.
No, it doesn't.
There's a whole other layer of defensive negative emotion that feels deeply personal and social.
Exactly. Which brings us to the psychological architecture of the mind. Because to understand why we suffer so much in social dynamics, we have to examine the ego.
And we really need to redefine that word, because typically when you call someone out for their ego, it means they are arrogant or bragging at a dinner party.
Right. But Maurice redefines the ego as this self-identity that your mind has constructed over your lifetime to navigate complex social hierarchies.
So it's not just pride.
No, it is a psychological entity made entirely of thoughts, memories, adopted beliefs, and roles. But here's the catch. Because this identity has no concrete physical substance, it lives in a perpetual state of insecurity.
It's terrified of ceasing to exist.
Exactly.
So the ego is kind of like a hermit crab.
Yeah.
Like it's constantly looking for external shells, maybe a job title or a political belief to crawl into and protect itself so it feels real.
That is an incredibly accurate way to frame it, because the ego has no physical form. It survives by attaching itself to external forms. It basically equates the concept of having with being.
Having with being, okay.
Yeah. So I have this job title, therefore I am this title. I have this political philosophy, therefore I am this philosophy.
But wait, isn't having an identity a good thing? How does that actually cause negative emotions?
Well, it functions almost like a psychological autoimmune disease.
Oh, wow.
The mind's defense system starts attacking harmless things in the environment because it misidentifies them as mortal threats to its own identity.
I see. Which means if I challenge your political philosophy, you don't process it as an interesting intellectual debate.
Not at all. You process it as an assassination attempt.
An assassination attempt.
Yeah, because if the ego is entirely attached to a belief, an attack on that belief is a literal attack on the ego's existence.
That makes so much sense.
This is why abstract debates escalate into shouting matches, or even physical violence. The ego defends its conceptual boundaries with the exact same biological ferocity that an animal uses to defend its physical territory.
And once you understand this mechanism, you see it everywhere. Like, the book brings up parents living vicariously through their children.
Oh, yes.
Which perfectly explains the phenomenon of the parent screaming the loudest at the referee during, like, a junior soccer game.
That is a textbook example of egoic attachment. The parent's ego has merged with the child's performance.
So the child isn't just playing a game anymore.
Right. The child is no longer a separate, independent human playing a game. The child is an extension of the parent's identity as a successful person.
Ah.
So if the child loses the ball or misses a goal, the parent's ego feels a literal reduction in its own worth.
That is so wild.
The screaming from the touchline isn't about soccer. It is the sound of an ego fighting for its psychological survival.
And even mundane daily behaviors are driven by this, right? Like gossiping or complaining.
Oh, complaining is a highly effective survival strategy for the ego.
Really?
Yeah. When you complain about the weather or your neighbor or the traffic, you are implicitly asserting a powerful narrative. You're saying, reality is wrong and I am right.
And being right creates a temporary feeling of superiority.
Exactly, which solidifies the ego's boundary and makes it feel safe.
Okay, so if our biology uses fear to keep our bodies physically alive, and our ego uses defensive superiority to keep our identity alive, what actually are these emotions we end up feeling? Like, when these systems clash with reality and we get that overwhelming wave of negative emotion, what is it?
Well, at their most fundamental level, emotions are merely transient signals.
Transient signals.
Yes, they are temporary visitors in the nervous system. The emotion itself is not the problem. Negative emotions are not inherently bad. They are highly functional.
And the author compares them to physical pain, which I thought was brilliant.
It's a great comparison. Think about the utility of physical pain. If you rest your hand on a hot stove, the intense pain is what forces you to pull your hand away before the tissue is completely destroyed.
Right, it's a warning system.
Psychological pain works exactly the same way. Sadness, anger, and frustration. They are the emotional equivalent of a dashboard warning light.
Okay.
They are signaling that either your current situation requires evasive action or your interpretation of reality is fundamentally flawed.
So the warning light is useful. It's a good thing.
Yes.
But we spend our entire lives trying to smash the dashboard rather than looking at the engine.
We really do.
So how do we take a passing, useful signal and accidentally turn it into a permanent state of misery?
Well, Maurice provides a very specific formula for how a fleeting feeling hardwires itself into a miserable state.
Okay, what is the formula?
It goes: interpretation plus identification plus repetition equals a strong emotion.
Okay, let's break down the mechanics of that formula, starting with interpretation. The event itself doesn't cause the pain, right? It's the gap between reality and our expectation of reality that causes the pain.
Exactly. Consider the book's example of rain on a Saturday afternoon.
Okay.
The physical reality of rain is entirely neutral. It is just condensed water vapor falling from the atmosphere.
Right. But if I have packed a basket and planned a picnic, I interpret the water vapor as a curse. I feel angry, and I decide my entire weekend is ruined.
Exactly. Conversely, if I am a farmer experiencing a severe drought, I interpret that exact same water vapor as an absolute miracle, and I feel profound joy.
So the rain did not generate the emotion?
No. Your interpretation generated the emotion. The event has absolutely no power without your framing of it.
So that is interpretation. The second variable is identification, which honestly feels like the most dangerous trap because it is baked into our very language.
It really is.
Like, when the dashboard warning light goes off, what do we instinctively say?
We use the I am statement. We say, I am sad or I am angry,
We merge our entire identity with a transient chemical state.
which is structurally and factually incorrect. I mean, think about it. If you were sadness, you would cease to exist the moment you laughed.
Oh, wow. That's a great point.
When you say, I am sad, you are basically instructing your brain that this emotion is your core identity. You are taking the observer and fusing it with a signal.
So we have to separate them. But how?
The shift required here is semantic, but the impact is massive. You must practice creating linguistic distance.
Like changing the words we use in our head.
Exactly. Instead of saying, I am sad, you say, I am experiencing a feeling of sadness. Or, there is anger present in my body right now.
You acknowledge the warning light without deciding that you are the warning light.
Exactly. Which naturally prevents the final part of the formula. Repetition.
Because repetition is where this becomes deeply physiological, right?
Yes. If you repeatedly interpret events negatively, and you continually identify as that negativity, you engage the mechanics of neuroplasticity.
Neurons that fire together, wire together.
Exactly. Through a process called myelination, your brain wraps those frequently used neural pathways in a fatty layer, making the emotional signal travel faster and more efficiently.
Oh, wow. So we literally build a biological superhighway for misery.
We do. You condition your nervous system to optimize for anxiety or frustration. It becomes your default biological baseline.
So to break the cycle, you have to interrupt the formula.
Yes. When you experience a negative emotion, you locate the physical sensation in your body, you observe it with complete detachment, but you refuse to engage in the narrative your ego is spinning around it.
This is the critical transition from being a victim to becoming the witness.
Precisely.
The author uses this beautiful analogy of the sky and the clouds. The clouds are your emotions, the amygdala firing, the dopamine crashing, the ego grasping for control. And those clouds can be violent, dark, and overwhelming.
They can obscure your entire vision. But the sky, the vast open expanse in which these storms occur, remains entirely untouched by the weather.
Yeah.
The sky doesn't fight the storm. It simply holds space for it until it inevitably passes. You are not the storm. You are the space.
You are the space. I love that. You know, we started this deep dive by asking you, the listener, to check in with how you feel right now. And if you found a storm brewing in your body, maybe a knot of anxiety about an upcoming deadline, or a flash of frustration about a conversation you had earlier, you now understand the mechanics behind it.
Right. You know that your outdated biology is likely overreacting to a social pressure, treating it like a physical threat. You know that your constructed ego is fighting tooth and nail to protect its imaginary shell.
You now hold the instruction manual for your own mind. You don't have to be swept away by the current anymore. When the feeling arises, you don't have to merge with it. You can notice the warning light, pull your hand away from the hot stove, and simply watch the clouds drift by.
Which brings us to a crucial final question, one that builds on all the mechanics we've unpacked today, and something for you to truly evaluate on your own.
What's the question?
If you strip away the negativity bias of your biology, and you strip away the identity constructed by your ego, and you realize you are not the fleeting emotions passing through your nervous system,
Then what is left?
who is the you that is sitting there silently watching all of this happen?
Who is the witness? That is a profound thought to chew on. Thank you for joining us as we mapped out the mechanics of the mind today. Keep observing the storm, don't let the ego drive the car, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.